Okay, this is my 2x72-inch belt grinder. It's got this flat platen on it, and it's got this 12-inch contact wheel, and it's got this small wheel attachment on it. And it's variable speed, but I wanted more. I wanted to be able to run my polishing wheel off of it and use the variable speed to slow it down. So I would need some sort of arbor attachment to spin my angle grinder attachments on. So my thought was to drill a hole through this small wheel, run this bolt through, then I would have an arbor sticking out here that I could put my attachments on. And while I'm at it, I might as well make it so I can use all my angle grinder attachments as well. Alright, so this 13mm long bolt is what I use. It's an M10 by 1.5, and it's stainless steel. You can see there, it's an A4-70 stainless steel bolt. So I'll have to drill a 25/64 hole in the small wheel. So this is the drill bit I'm going to use, and it's a pilot drill bit, so it drills its own pilot hole, and I thought that would make a straighter hole. So the first thing I would need to do would be to drill the center out of this small wheel, but I didn't have a lathe, so I would have to do it on a drill press. So the first problem I ran into was how to secure it in the vise. I had a bearing on each end and I did not want to pull the bearings off, but there was no secure way I was going to hold that in the vise. So my solution to holding this in the vise was to use the small wheel attachment that came with the grinder. If I could secure it to that, then clamp that to the vise, I think I could drill a pretty accurate hole through the center of this. So I spent some time making sure that the vise, the bottom, the floor on the vise would be perfectly lined up with the drill bit, so that when I set this on here and clamped it in, it would be all lined up. So the first problem I ran into was that the bottom of this was not flat. You can see where this bar came through here. It stuck out just a little bit, so that when I would put it in the vise, it would rock. So you can see that I ground it off and made it flat. The second problem was that this was not at a 90-degree angle to the rest of it. So it was a little bit high on this side, but I was going to have to grind too much off to just simply keep grinding on this. When I put this together and put it in the vise, the bottom part was in too far and the top was out too far. So my solution to that was to make these cardboard shims, put them in the bottom, then put it together. And that got everything lined up exactly the way I needed it to be. So my next problem would be, how would I secure this small wheel to this attachment? It would be easy enough to clamp this in the vise, but how would I secure this to the attachment? My solution was to use these pipe clamps to hold it in place. And I put this cardboard over the rubber to keep the clamps from cutting into the rubber. I've also made sure that I put the shims in the bottom here. So now this should be ready to go in the vise. The other thing I did was I put these clamps up high enough that the jaws of the vise would be below them. That was a little bit of trial and error. I put the first one down here and I couldn't close the jaws. So these have to be up high enough that they're out of the way of the jaws of the vise. Okay, it's clamped in the vise. I've lined it up as well as I could. The only thing left was to start drilling and see what happened. So one issue I had to deal with was that my drill press did not have the range of motion to go completely through in one pass. I've gotten 3/4 of the way through, but I need to take this bit, move it down a little bit, and then finish. So I wanted to make sure that while I was drilling this, I did not overheat this bearing. So I kept plenty of oil on it and I had my air compressor ready to hit it with some cold air if I felt that it was getting a little too hot. So one of my main concerns when I knew that I could start the hole exactly in the top because I had a nice center hole to start with, but I worried that the drill bit might wander on the way down, and if it did, it would make this unusable if it was too far off in the bottom. Okay, I got my hole drilled. This was the top side, and you can see it's pretty centered. On the bottom, it's slightly off. You can see it's just off just a little bit. So when I mount it, I will put my bolt through the side that's off a little bit, and the side that's perfectly centered will be the side that I'll mount my implements on. Okay, now that I've got my bolt through this, I need a way to be able to put my attachments on. So this is a 10mm bolt, and these are 5/8. So my solution is to use this adapter that comes with a lot of the implements that you buy for your angle grinder. It's got 10mm, it's made to fit a 10mm bolt. So I'll put it on here, then I can put my attachments onto that. The problem I ran into was when I put this in the small wheel holder, this side fits, but this side doesn't. So I would have to do something with this bolt. Also, what I didn't show was that I took the angle grinder and ground this out a little bit, but I didn't want to take any more off than I had to. So I got this side looking pretty good, but this side I'm going to have to do something to get this to fit better. Okay, so I flipped this adapter over. It spins in there perfectly now. The problem now is that I can't get my attachments on that. So what I decided to do was take another one of these adapters, thread it on here, and then I'll weld that together, and then I can thread my attachment onto that. Okay, this is how I set it up to weld it. I threaded both of these adapters on, made sure they were nice and lined up in the middle. One of the things, I wanted to make sure that this one wouldn't be wobbling on there. So if they were both threaded on here, when I welded them, it would be nice and true. The other thing is that I want to make sure that as this thread came through this adapter, it would line up with the threads on the inside of this adapter. Okay, I finished welding them together, and I put them on my small wheel and cinched it down. Now I can put it in my small wheel attachment, and it spins just like it's supposed to. So with the 5/8, I can put these attachments on, my angle grinder attachments, and the internal 10mm threads, I can put these other attachments on. So now all I gotta do is put it on the grinder and see how it works. Okay, I've got it mounted on the angle grinder, and I'm ready to give it a try. Alright, it looks pretty good. Alright, so here's the wire wheel. It's a 7-inch flap disc. Alright, I put this cutoff wheel on here just to see how true it spins, and it looks pretty darn good considering I drilled it on a drill press and not a lathe. And here's my large polishing wheel. And then this is my small polishing wheel. This is the main reason I built this whole thing.